Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend and esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as being the vice chair of the state Republican Party. Well, Jesse, we're back, and as usual, the world keeps moving at a very, very fast clip. It's tough to keep up with everything that's going on.
It certainly is, but it gives us a great hour to discuss all these issues that the mainstream media and our listeners probably don't get from, big tech and big communication companies.
Well, the first thing on my list when I was working with you putting together the list is I was going to talk about the Biden open door policy. Mm-hmm. But given the fact that you have yet another indictment of our former president of the United States, why don't we begin talking about that?
Sure. You can fill in and you'll be able to correct me on the law. But what I believe is that the President Donald Trump, was rather pathetic because I think we discussed it last week and maybe the last 2 weeks as the Hunter Biden sweetheart plea deal was unraveling in the Delaware federal courthouse in front of that judge. After it unraveled, Donald Trump made a statement, maybe issued on Truth Social, that he said, well, I guess I'm going to get indicted soon. About a week later, boom, here he comes back, indicted. And, Your Honor, I think that just the way this comes out, the timing is bad. It's unbelievable that I think I just did an interview on this, and I said, when I talk to residents and I walk door to door for our candidates and such, they're not talking about this, but what they're seeing is a corrupt, negligent, inept, and dare I say, and we've discussed this, a weaponized Department of Justice. That if you're an opponent of a certain political thought process that's administered through the White House and amplified through big tech and mass mainstream media, the Department of Justice is going to indict you and is going to put you under investigation, whether you're President Trump or if you're a parent in front of a school board.
Well, I think that's a sad but true statement, Jesse, because let me just tell you what the charges are against former President Trump. The first count is conspiracy to defraud the United States. Second count is conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. The third count is obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And charge 4 is conspiracy against rights. Well, let me tell you, as a lawyer and a former Supreme Court justice who knows a little bit about the law, to say that this indictment is overreaching is to be kind. Mm-hmm. You have a hired gun, Jack Smith, and that's what he is. He's a hired gun. Whenever you need to do a hit on a political opponent, they bring out Jack Smith. So Jack Smith indicted, I have to correct myself because after all I was a judge. Only a grand jury indicts. Mm-hmm. Prosecutor doesn't indict. Prosecutor merely presents to the grand jury. But I say merely with tongue-in-cheek because anybody who's ever presented to a grand jury, and I did so when I was Assistant Attorney General before I was on the bench, you present the facts you want, and you charge them on the law you want. So the former Chief Judge of the state of New York, Saul Wachtler, famously said, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. And Judge Wachtler was absolutely correct. So Smith makes the presentation of the facts. He puts in the witnesses he wants to put in. He puts in the documents he wants to put in. And he instructs them on the law that should be charged. And lo and behold, they indict on these 4 counts. Now, you alluded to, and I think it's very interesting, I was watching Fox News last night. Every time there was some bad news about the Biden influencing scam, which may implicate the President of the United States, but certainly his brother and his son, every time that happened, within the next day or so, there was another indictment of Donald Trump. So we now have 4 of those. Now, you said a week ago, actually I have to correct you, because on Monday there was testimony by this young man who was the colleague and business partner of Hunter Biden before a congressional committee, the Oversight Committee. And what happened? He brought in the President of the United States into 20 phone calls involving business partners and a couple of dinners involving business partners of Hunter Biden with the President of the then Vice President of the United States. It's absolutely incredible. And the most telling one of all, of course, was there was a complaint by people in Ukraine about they were being investigated by the Attorney General of Ukraine. They reached out to Hunter Biden and said, we got to do something about it. There was a phone call where Biden, the president or the vice president at the time, was on the call. Within 3 days, he was on a plane to the Ukraine. And lo and behold, you have that famous talk at the Council of Foreign Relations where he bragged about telling them, you fire this Attorney General or you won't get the $1 billion that you need for your defense. You want to call that a coincidence? I don't know if I believe in coincidences. Do you?
I don't. I don't believe in coincidences that, as you said, there's something going bad for the Democratic administration, and we have this type of activity going on. And the individual involved, Devon Archer, even further, the who was testifying behind closed doors in front of Congressman Comer's Oversight Committee, as he's the chair of that, was detailing these type of information, and will be out in the open hopefully soon. But as you go through this, it's amazing because as we, you got to mix the two, I guess, because they're almost matched up because we don't believe in coincidences. But even the weekend before Devon Archer was supposed to be testifying in front of the Oversight Committee, the Department of Justice was stepping up its effort to have a sentencing hearing for a 2018 or 2022 charge, 2 felony charges that he had involving, I believe, a not-for-profit. I have to look at my notes exactly what it was. Now, they've been postponed. This sentencing has been postponed for a better part of a year. Now, on the eve of him testifying before the House Oversight Committee, they're securing a sentencing date.
Why do you think they did that?
It's every time, as you pointed out, whenever there is bad news and real news that the mainstream media and the Democrats cannot fight on its face with the facts, they change the discussion.
Well, I'll tell you, in my humble opinion, it was a clear attempt to intimidate Archer.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about what the rules of the game are. Archer, first of all, is trying to appeal his sentence. He said he was missentenced. Mm-hmm. So there's a pending appeal. So there's no rush to have the judge set a surrender date. They could have waited. So there's no coincidence. Then somebody with some brains and common sense realized that they made a terrible public relations, political and legal mistake, and they pulled the letter back and they wrote a letter, it was never our intent to. Of course, they got caught. They got caught with their pants down, so they had to retract the first letter and come up with a self-serving other letter. The fact that these people think that we're all morons is shocking and insulting. You have the newly elected congressman from Lower Manhattan, Dan Goldman. Now, what is Goldman most famous for? Being part of the whole Mueller investigation. He is a partisan Democrat, and he has the audacity to say to the American people, well, he was just trying to be nice to his son because they was losing his other son, and how can he hang up when he tells them? It's all nonsense. 20 calls to business associates is a signal. He said, we just talked about the weather. That's according to Congressman Goldman. The weather? Well, these must be very interesting conversations because every time he needs to talk to a business associate, Joe Biden gives the weather report. It's a wonderful thing. They really expect us to believe that. They sit down for dinner at Cafe Milano a couple of times for a couple of hours of the clip. They're talking about the weather then. The only weather report I get is I get it early in the morning. Do I need an umbrella or don't I need an umbrella? I don't know about you, Jesse. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. And a couple of things we need to talk about and as we go into this segment is first, can you imagine the unfolding in front of the American people is the fact that the Democrats in charge of the White House and their compliant mass media partners and allies, and that in the Senate, U.S. Senate, are basically demonstrating that there are two levels of government, two standards of justice here in America. There's a justice for the elite, the Bidens of the world, the Democratic elite, and then there's another form of justice, which is more punitive, where you use the scales of justice not for fairness and truth, but for political payback and for political opposition, against political opposition.
Well, let's take a look at these two Jack Smith cases. One in federal court in Florida, the other one now in District of Columbia, at least for the time being. All right. The one in Florida, what does he do? He realizes that his legal theories with respect to the retention by a former president of the United States is in trouble because he doesn't have a sweetheart jury pool or a sweetheart judge. He knows that, and therefore he picks up another venue, trumps up another case. It does in District of Columbia. Now, what do we know about District of Columbia? We know all the judges there, or virtually all the judges in the U.S. District Court, are either Clinton, Obama, or Biden appointments.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We know they're incredibly hostile to Trump personally.
Republicans in general.
And Republicans in general. You know that the jury pool consists of people, 95% of the people in the District of Columbia who took the effort to vote, voted for Biden and against Trump.
And they also voted for a convicted, drug addict for mayor.
The mayor, yeah, I
course.
remember that. Yeah, I mean, so anything goes in District of Columbia. So you think he can get a fair trial? And that was forum shopping by Jack Smith because he realized that he had a fair judge in Florida. Mm-hmm. He had a weak case in Florida, so he had to gin something up, and he went to the District of Columbia. So there are no coincidences, as we've talked about. So we begin this saga of the indictments with Alvin Bragg's case, which was total nonsense. At most, it was a civil matter. It was a bad case. It will be thrown out. No common sense jury will vote to convict. And if they do, it will be overturned on appeal. It's a bad case. They're making up law. They're being creative. And anybody, as Professor Dershowitz would tell you, it's not the job of prosecutors to be creative. It's the job of prosecutors to respect the law. You don't stretch legal theories to indict somebody. If you want to stretch legal theories, well, then you ought to be Jack Smith, because this indictment that I just read to you about the case in District of Columbia, all it is a stretch.
Exactly. Now, and one of the things I also want to talk about stretch, and then you, as we sat down for this interview, for the show, you shared with me the National Review editorial from August 1st, which basically says, and it popped in my head when I read the indictment, or when I heard about the indictment late that night, that wasn't this already prosecuted in some type of capacity already? And it was almost verbatim in the impeachment.
Of course. And then the show hearings brought by the Democrats, who blew the Republicans off the committee.
Exactly.
So it was a one-sided hearing. They had their shots, and guess what? They went nowhere.
It did. It did not go anywhere.
Yeah. You see, what they're doing fundamentally, and this is not my expression, though I will use it, they are criminalizing political activity.
Yes, they are.
They are criminalizing freedom of speech. And that's the danger of this latest indictment. They're criminalizing. Look, first of all, if you watch Jack Smith do his press conference, he said very simply, well, we're charging these, and these 4 counts. But he kept talking about the demonstration and the riot at the Capitol. There was no indictment coming out of that. Mm-hmm. Understand that. So what he's trying to do is now trying to taint and to poison the minds of the potential jury pool by stringing in the riot, which, by the way, Donald Trump said, go to the Capitol and demonstrate peacefully. So how are you going to lock him in to inciting a riot? You can't. So he doesn't have an indictment for that. So he goes to these other matters. Look, Democrats have challenged the returns in other elections, including
Bush in 2000.
Yeah, they do that, including the Congressman Raskin from Maryland did that, who's now, so you have 2 new congressmen who are competing for the Adam Schiff Award. Mm-hmm. Raskin in Maryland and Goldman in New York. And what do they have in common? No respect for the rule of law, no respect for the facts. All it is political spin, and it's absolutely outrageous. This country does not need, at this time, this divisiveness. As you and I have talked about, and you so eloquently have pointed out over the months and months and months that we do the show together, we're under threat internally and externally, and this is what Jack Smith chooses to do to our country at this time. This is outrageous. I'm upset.
Before Kevin takes us to a hard break, for those listeners that say, well, it's just about Donald Trump, or maybe it's just about some Republican politicians, it's not. Because this is the same Department of Justice that's wanted to classify parents questioning their school boards as domestic terrorists. There's no place for that in this country. And you can be Donald Trump or you can be John Smith going to your local school board. They treat anybody that has a different opinion than theirs as a threat that they will use the threat of prosecution to silence.
Well, that's a good point. I want to make one last point before we get the hook from Kevin. And he has that big hook. I can see it there. There was a special counsel appointed to investigate Joe Biden's retention of documents. Okay. You haven't heard anything about that, have you?
Nope.
Okay. By the way, the Presidential Records Act does not cover a United States senator nor a vice president of the United States. Joe Biden had absolutely no right to have those documents in his possession. Absolutely no right. Trump had very credible reasons to have it and has defenses under the Presidential Records Act. So where do you hear anything at all from the special counsel? Okay? Garland did that so he could say that he's being fair. Well, if he's being fair, I want to know why they have a rush to judgment on Trump and you hear nothing at all about Biden. Let's take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment for more interesting conversation. Thank you.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican. So, Jesse, talking about strange coincidences, let's talk about this kid, Sam Bankman-Fried. You know who he is. Our listeners know who he is. He's the kid who bilked people in this Bitcoin scam or whatever they call it. Cryptocurrency. I don't go near that stuff because from the beginning I always thought it was very questionable. So I would never invest hard-earned money, which I work for, in something like that. But this kid lived like an emperor and lived lavishly, but also he gave lavishly.
Yes,
Jesse.
he did.
And you know who he gave lavishly to? The Democratic Party and elected officials and potential office holders. And so there was an investigation going on, and there was an indictment, and they were looking at the campaign funds given by Bankman-Fried, which is from stolen money, by the way, stolen money.
Yes.
Okay. And how much was it, Jesse?
$35 million to Democratic candidates?
Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Pretty much, yeah.
And so you'd think that an honest Justice Department would look at it and say, whoa, all these politicians got the money. At the very least, they should be giving the money back into a fund to restore the people who are victimized. But the question is, which individual politicians was this money given to, and for what purposes? What was he trying to buy with these $35 million? You know, he was the second biggest contributor to the Democratic Party in the country.
In the 2022 cycle, yeah. And he also funded insurgent Republican primaries in some cases. It was right in Suffolk County. He was running one. His girlfriend, or his fiancée at the time, they're probably still together, I'm not sure, Michelle Bond, was running as... She moved into the district, registered as a voter on June 1st, filed petitions under the redistricting year on June 10th for the purposes of getting on the ballot.
That was his girlfriend?
That was his fiancée.
Really?
Well, no, she was associated, and I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. Let me get my facts. I know that she lobbied on behalf of the cryptocurrency, and I believe on behalf of his firms. Her fiance worked with Sam Bankman-Fried. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, it's hard to keep track. There's so many moving pieces. But I remember her, lovely lady, very charming, very urbane, and she was running against a very qualified candidate who later won the nomination, beat her, and was elected to Congress, Nick LaLota.
Yep, a Naval Academy graduate.
And so what was that about? Why was he sending that money there? Well, because they wanted to have one of their own to disrupt the Republican Party.
Absolutely. What they were trying to do is we were unraveling this. We knew something was going on here because we saw this money coming out and the way it happened. And you know, we expected some insurgents and some outsiders to pop in on redistricting years. But the way this happened and with the money that was funneled into this, it was amazing. We were outspent, you know, Nick LaLota and the committee was outspent like 3 to 4 to 1 in this case. And we were successful. I think we won by like 70% of the vote of the primary. But what they were eyeing was exactly that. They were bankrolling Democrats and picking and cherry picking Republican districts to flip to create, in my estimation, and I'm alleging, you know, it's just my estimation, a cryptocurrency caucus to protect themselves because ultimately, right after election, the cryptocurrency industry collapsed. Sam Bankman-Fried and his entire alleged fraud scheme was unveiled. And economically, it took down Tom Brady. It took down a number of individuals. Now, what happened here, and you're a judge and a lawyer, you'll be able to explain this. It's my understanding that technically what they dropped was the campaign finance charges.
That's correct.
Right?
Everything else stands, as far as I know.
And they did that because the Department of Justice, in its extradition warrant with the Bohemian authorities, did not include that charge. Now, it's interesting. That charge, as you pointed out as we opened up this segment, why? Because of $35 million that was bankrolling Democrats to retain the House majority. That's what this was about. They were insulating those Democratic officials.
So, in other words, they get the noise because they couldn't avoid dealing with the campaign finance because it was public record about the $35 million, and he was the second biggest donor. So they had to do something. So it's either the most incompetent, inept prosecutors, they don't know how to draft a warrant, or it's something more nefarious. I have no idea whether it's nefarious or ineptitude, but I'm very puzzled by why that's the one that gets dropped.
Let me ask you something, Your Honor. Place yourself back on the bench. And you've got and the prosecutor and the defense lawyers are in front of you and saying, Your Honor, we have to drop this case over a technicality. Probably one of the first two things you learn in law school, right, when you get to that part of the segment is how to do a warrant and such. How do you look at the prosecutor and say, do you ask him if he's admitted into the bar? I mean, did he go to law school? I mean, what I think this demonstrates, and I'll let you answer that, but what I think that demonstrates, as you say, negligence or something more nefarious, it's another black eye for the Department of Justice, the Biden Department of Justice.
Well, let's talk about the Biden Department of Justice for a minute. You have an Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, a very distinguished Chief Judge in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, was Barack Obama's nominee to go to the United States Supreme Court. There was a political fight between McConnell and the White House, and McConnell, as his right, because he was the majority leader of the Senate, decided he was not going to give a hearing, and it's his right. there's no obligation for the Senate to give just because a nomination is proposed. They don't have to give a hearing.
About
It's
a
simple.
year out from the 2016 presidential
So
election.
they didn't do it. So he's denied a hearing and it never goes before the Senate. And even if it had gone before the Senate, it's very likely he would have been voted down because of the politics at the time. And lo and behold, he becomes Attorney General of the United States. Well, people are thinking very highly of him because he really is at a central casting. A very nice-looking man, very quiet, low-key demeanor. He's got the shock of white hair. He's well-dressed. He's calm. He's dispassionate. I say, okay, that's good. We'll have a professional Attorney General. But there's so many questions about how Judge Garland has run the office of Attorney General that amazes me. You alluded earlier to the fact that he started doing an investigation of parents who were protesting at school boards for critical race theory and indoctrination of their children. Turns out, you know what prompted that statement by the Justice Department? The teachers' union is working in collaboration with the White House, and that letter was drafted together between the teachers' union and the White House. All right? And then, lo and behold, it's then sent on as a ostensibly legitimate protest to the Justice Department. They open up this inquiry, totally disregarding the First Amendment. They have this Delaware case where you have indictments against very serious charges against the former president. I'm sorry, against the son of the president of the United States, Hunter Biden. Okay, so they sit down and they take years and years and years. Weiss is the U.S. attorney. Everybody says, well, he was a Trump appointee, except they forget the fact is that he was proposed by 2 United States senators who were Democrats.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so they overlook that fact. So you have Weiss, and Weiss takes 5 years to go forward. Then when he finally does the deal, you have 2 slap-on-the-wrist misdemeanors, and you have the felon charge of the gun possession and lying on a federal application for the gun. The felony charges were very serious, and it would pick up the Burisma scandal, the whole alleged payoff to get rid of the Attorney General of Ukraine. So what happens there? They then go before the judge, and they say to the judge, well, we want to do this plea deal. We're going to do 2 misdemeanors. And the judge looks at them and said, well, why are you doing 2 misdemeanors? You know, what about all the other stuff in the years before, the felonies from before? Oh, the statute of limitations ran. The statute of limitations ran. So they're ignoring the Burisma charges because of the statute of limitations. Now, let me tell you another little inside story. When the Biden lawyers thought they had a real problem and they were trying to deal with this, they expressed a willingness to the United States Department of Justice to waive the statute of limitations, to toll the statute of limitations. And the Justice Department wouldn't take that waiver. Yes.
They would not take the waiver.
They would not take
Isn't
the waiver.
that normal that the Department of Justice, the prosecutors, accept that waiver?
Accept it. They want that to keep the case open. Okay? So the Justice Department does not take the waiver that the defense team for Hunter Biden wants to give them. And therefore, you have a running the statute of limitations, and they can't get Hunter on the Burisma stuff. Okay. Then, so that's so much for fairness in Justice Department, right?
Exactly.
So now let's take another example. So they proposed to this judge a plea agreement and a diversion agreement. Now, having done both in the state Supreme Court as a trial judge, I will tell you they're 2 different documents. Mm-hmm. The diversion document says we won't prosecute you if you do this drug program and this counseling program, and cases will be dismissed at the end. That was a felony they're talking about. Okay? The plea agreement says we're going to plead to the 2 misdemeanors, and the sentencing will be up to the judge under the guidelines. Okay. They tag onto the diversion agreement an immunity provision, which would have picked up all of Hunter Biden's past crimes that he'd ever been involved in, much broader than merely the failure to pay taxes or the gun. Much broader. It would have picked up all the influence peddling scam coming out of the Biden. family. That's what that immunity deal was. So it was a immunity deal, but where do they tag it into? They tag it into the diversion piece and not the plea agreement. So again, anybody who knows this business, Jesse, their eyes are bleeding and their heads exploding because it's a sham. And this judge, to her credit, realized it was a sham and threw it right back in their faces and said, this is unacceptable. I want an explanation. Come back. And that's what we have now.
Exactly. I mean, we talked about this last week, and, Eric Levine was on with us. And they did not even know the immunity part of it was not part of any future cases. And there was an ongoing investigation that came out during this course. It's just, again, we talk about negligence, ineptness, or just playing out. It's political and political corruption at its highest level. But one thing that you've said over and over the last several months, number one, let me just say, let's thank Mitch McConnell, despite whatever differences we may have, that he utilized the tools of the Senate as the majority leader to prevent this Merrick Garland from getting on the Supreme Court. Imagine the state of our country if that actually moved forward. So let's thank him for that. But as we go forward here, you've always mentioned, when is it we're going to, and how many more cases or examples are we going to need for there finally to be a special prosecutor appointed to investigate the dealings and the operations and the decision-making process of our Attorney General Garland? Well,
it's a real problem. I'm very concerned about that because one of the there's a debate going on now between the Republicans in Congress, between the House Republicans and some of the Senate Republicans, Jesse. Mm-hmm. The House Republicans have 3 committees: Ways and Means Committee, Oversight and Judiciary, and they're going full bore ahead to try to unravel this and show the truth to the American people what happened, what didn't happen. They don't want to have a special counsel. Some Senate Republicans, calling for a special counsel. Now, why do you have that division? Because the Justice Department will always say we can't cooperate with the investigation of the legislative body and legislative investigation oversight because it's an ongoing investigation. That's their cover. It's always a cover that stymies a third party from looking at those matters. Now, why is that particularly cute or troubling here? Because if there's an ongoing investigation, why would they ever give him a plea deal in the first place? Exactly. And 2, if there's an ongoing investigation, Jesse, why is there an immunity piece in a diversion? So there wasn't an ongoing investigation. They were just mouthing the words ongoing investigation because it was not a real investigation. But by saying the words, they would stymie legislative investigation oversight from the House. Now, the danger of special counsels is that the Attorney General appoints a special counsel. And the question becomes, if you appoint a special counsel, why would you ever believe that you can get an honest, forthright, independent voice doing the real job the way Durham did his job?
Absolutely.
So do you trust Merrick Garland to appoint somebody who's really going to do the job? I hate to be disrespectful, but how about the guy they just appointed to look at Biden's document? You ever hear from him, as I said earlier in the show? So a lot of troubling questions in this Justice Department under the leadership of Merrick Garland, worthy of a real investigation. Kevin, once again, has that hook he's flashing at us, Jesse. He's pointing to the window. I don't know if he's threatening to throw you out or me out or both of us out. But we're going to take a break.
It's a nice view.
It's a lovely view. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in a few moments. Please stay with us.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, Finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
All right, we are back with Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, Jesse, I want to change the focus a little bit, and I want to talk about the Biden open door policy at our border. You know, we walk down the streets of Manhattan. We go all around the city of New York. We're talking about migrants all over the place. They're in the suburbs now. They're in upstate. They're illegal migrants. They're breaking the laws of the United States by coming in here. They should never have been allowed to come in here in the first place. Now, Mayor Adams made a big show of going to the buses and say, come on down. You're welcome here. We're a sanctuary city. We'll do everything we can to help you. You know, you get medical care, you get a phone, you get food, you get shelter, and the taxpayers have to pay for this. Now, a funny thing happened. In the year from the time he started welcoming the buses, you have close to 100,000 illegal migrants that are now running around the city of New York. Now, not too far from where you and I are sitting right now is the Roosevelt Hotel, the famous hotel, Guy Lombardo, New Year's Eve, the Roosevelt Hotel. Guy Lombardo and the Royal Canadians, for those of us who are old enough. I don't know if Jesse's old enough to remember that. I remember that. It was a great hotel. And now it's a dumping ground for these migrants. And if you walk by there, as I have, they're surrounding the whole city block. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So you have to ask yourself the question, Jesse, is this good public policy to dump these people on our streets? Are they a threat to the public health? Who knows what diseases they have? Are they a threat to public safety? We don't know what their criminal records are. Are they drug dealers? Are they human traffickers? We don't know the answer to that. Do they have criminal records for violence? We don't know. There are no rap sheets with these people. They've never been screened for disease or gang affiliations or cartel affiliations, organized crime, criminal records. Nobody knows who they are. And they're walking our streets. They walk amongst us. And we're supposed to say, oh, it's just swell. So I commend our Mayor, Eric Adams, who I know well and who I like, for saying that the state government and the federal government have to do more. And he said they need more money. Well, I respectfully suggest that Mayor Adams is missing the point. This is not about getting more money because you're never going to have enough money.
No, you're not.
And the border keeps opening. So now you have 100,000 of these folks. A year from now, you have another 100,000. A year after that, you have 100,000. It keeps speeding up. And you had an increase, a big spike in immigration, illegal immigration, in the month of July. So I submit to you, there's a very simple answer to this problem. Close our borders.
Build the wall.
Build the wall. Close our borders. Work out deals with the Central American countries to keep them there. Tell them that if they break out through our borders illegally, they will never be granted asylum status.
Return to Trump-era border orders, and we will have a secure border, and also back up those border agents who are putting their lives at stake.
How many tens of thousands, was it 80,000 IRS agents been hired?
87. They want to hire 87,000 new IRS agents to investigate the listener.
Okay, now let me ask you this question. You need 87,000 new IRS agents to harass taxpayers?
And they shouldn't have been in a BS infrastructure bill either.
Of course. So maybe, just maybe, instead of having 87,000 IRS, maybe you need 5,000. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need 10,000. I'll give you a benefit of that. 20,000. Mm-hmm. Take all the rest of those agents and put them on the border patrol.
Absolutely.
Okay. And by the way, Governor Abbott of Texas is doing the right thing. He's putting a barrier in the Rio Grande River. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he's trying to protect the sovereign territory of Texas. But as you and I have said often, there are no border towns anymore in the United States. We're all border towns because they keep flowing into our country. So he does the right thing to try to protect not only Texas, but the whole rest of this country. And what does the Biden Justice Department do? They sue Texas. I mean, it makes you crazy.
It's unreal. And I think we can sum this up. The Biden policy and the Democrats, their policy for me, can be summed up in 2 words: unknown and hypocrisy. The unknown is what you pointed out. No one knows who's coming across the border. No one's vetting these individuals. We know, what we do know is that China and its partners with the cartel are sending fentanyls into our streets and killing our kids. They're killing our families. Number 2, we're allowing human trafficking. We're allowing, the abuse of women and children in this, sexually and otherwise, as indentured servants. But it doesn't seem that we have a problem with that under the Biden administration. The hypocrisy is that a gentleman like Mayor Adams, who says, come to New York. Once they're here in New York, and he can't take it anymore, and his citizens are being impacted negatively, and it's costing them money, he wants to put them in everybody else's community. So I give great credence to the champions of those counties and towns that have issued executive orders to prevent the placement of these unvetted migrants in their communities without checking with the local officials first. The Suffolk County Legislature had to force our Democrat County Executive, Steve Ballone, into doing an executive order because they hired counsel to fight the placement of these unvetted, unknown migrants in our communities.
Well, they rescinded Title 42. And
exactly.
And as you and I know, that's a public health consideration. That's enough to slow down or to freeze border entry. Now, we've had Dr. Siegel on Kaz and Cosby, the show we do in the evening with John Caspitini and Reese Cosby. We've had Dr. Miklos on the show as well. And what's happening? Diseases that we haven't seen in the United States for
leprosy.
Leprosy. You imagine having leprosy? I mean, that's from the Middle Ages. Exactly. Leprosy. It's frightening. You have leprosy, you have malaria, you have all these diseases. We have no idea what these and they're sitting in our streets.
And how about the hypocrisy? You couldn't leave your house if you didn't get vaccinated, according to the Democrats and the progressives.
And you had to wear your mask.
And you had to wear your mask. Double it up in many cases, even though it was science that was not really scientific. Yet they allow everyone across the border, illegally, unvetted, and not required a shot. No required a vax. It's unbelievable, the hypocrisy. And let's also talk about the other hypocrisy. Whenever they wanted to pull at the heartstrings of the American voters about the borders and migrants and their families, they would use, during the Trump administration, they would use images, video, B-roll of migrants in cages. Except they never reported or identified the source of those videos were during the Obama administration. This is why I talk about the unknown and the hypocrisy of the Democrats.
Selective outrage.
Absolutely.
It's all about selective outrage. All right, let's switch gears. Something very, very interesting is happening, and as you pointed out to me during the break, is happening in the United Kingdom, but it's also happening in the United States. It's a new phenomenon of political correctness. They do everything possible to intimidate and to thwart independent thought, independent language, a different point of view. The censorship cancer is all over the United States. So what are some of the banks looking at doing? It's called debanking. Debanking. What does that mean? Jesse, that means if they don't like what you say, they're going to cancel your checking account. I mean, why are banks in the business of policing freedom of speech? Why would they even think about doing that? They did it against Farage in England. Mm-hmm. And
the Brexit here?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And what was Brexit all about, by the way, parenthetically? What was
England?
Of course, England was losing England as it knew it. It was losing its national identity for an over-influx of migration. And they were saying, the great expression, they said, there will always be in England. Well, it wasn't going to be the England that they knew and loved with having their culture and their values. It was an influx from the Middle East by the hundreds of thousands, and you know what they call London now if you talk to the cab drivers?
No.
London stand. So what your problem is what is wrong with, one, having national sovereignty, policing your borders, and what's wrong with saying that the people of France and the people of Spain, the people of England, and the people of Italy and the people of Scandinavia have a right to the integrity of their national character, of their national culture. Why? That's racism? That's not racism. That's pride in your culture, and people should be fighting to defend that. Immigration is a wonderful thing as long as it's legal, and when the people come here, they respect our values and our laws and our culture. It's not for them to come here and tell us how to live and how to change our values. You just had this in a hate crime against this poor gay fellow who was pumping gas, shirtless. He was, the term of what the gay community talks about, it's called voguing. Voguing means they're dancing in the streets and to whatever music they're dancing to. So there was a group from the Middle East who found that offensive against their religion. So what do? They stabbed this poor soul to death. Well, let me get this straight. You come over to our country, you have somebody who has a right to dance in the streets. You stab him to death because he's not wearing a shirt because it offends your religion, and that's okay? These are the same people who take gays and they throw them off their rooftops or behead them, and this is the culture they want to impose on our people in the United States? Please give me a break. Kevin's got that hook out again. We're going to be taking a break. We'll be back in a few moments for our final segment of The Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Stay with us, please.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss. Oof, like wind in your hair carefree. Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree. Yes. Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree? He's on a roll now. Spit toothpaste on the faucet? You got it. You got it. Peanut butter on the light switch. Oh, spritz, spritz. Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back. Use as directed.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back for the final segment of this week's Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, Jesse, there's this new secular religion. It's called global warming. Not my term of art, but I think it's very clever. They call it the climate change, the global warming industrial complex. Just like President Eisenhower warned us against the military-industrial complex, the writers of this article say there's such a thing as a climate change, global warming industrial complex. What does that mean? It means that you have a combination of a religious fervor, a secular religion, true believers that the end of the world is nigh, and it's going to be any moment now. I mean, AOC, not the greatest scientist or brain that we've ever come across, saying we have 8 years to go. Well, God willing, we're alive 8 years from now. I'd like to see the end of days in 8 years. We're talking about tens of thousands of years ahead, and technology can deal with this. Is there some global warming? Yes. What's the impact of carbon dioxide? What's the impact of the carbon emissions? What's the impact of cars? What's the impact of fossil fuels? I can't tell you, but I can tell you, as long as India and China do whatever they want to do, even if we shut down everything, we took all the lawnmowers, all the refrigerators, all our toasters, all our appliances, all our cars, we took them all off the road, abolished all fossil fuels, it would not make a dent in global warming. So they do not deal with the facts on the ground, but they have this religious fervor. And if you're against their religious fervor, somehow there's something wrong with you. Second piece of it, this is a money-making scam. How do they get their money? They get their money from the federal government. Remember the Solyndra scandal?
Yes.
Obama going there saying this is the wave of the future. Solar energy, solar energy, solar energy. What happened to Solyndra? It fell apart. It went bankrupt. Now they got another company, another solar company, and they're now giving, as part of the infrastructure deal, 10 times the amount they gave to Solyndra to this solar company. What do you think is going to happen with that? Somebody on the inside is making a lot of money on this deal. Who's being taken advantage of? The United States taxpayers. For a wishful thinking, for a dream. You'll never stop, with the technology we have today, the need for fossil fuels, natural gas. You can't do it with wind. You can't do it with solar. You just can't do it. What do you think, Jesse?
I think eventually profiteering was going to come into this religious fervor, as you pointed it out. That's where ultimately everything is, because first you build up the anticipation, you build up the need, the desire, the fervor. As you make it a cult, and then you have a way of funding it, and funding it all our friends, everybody. You know who's making out in this? At the expense of American taxpayers, those bill writers, those legislative writers that build these into our massive, infrastructure, big ugly bills that go through our House of Representatives and our Senate and signed into law by Democratic presidents like Biden. This is yet another boondoggle, and we've seen it, as you said, by Solyndra. We've seen it in the cryptocurrency. Every time that they've applied a subsidy on an untested, this is the only place that they want to give money where the science doesn't catch up to the actual results of it. Everything's about science except where I want to give my buddies money, and that's where this problem really lies. Is it's not scientific, it's not productive. We've always said the Democrats' desire for a headline and a philosophical change of this society is outracing and outpacing the science behind it, and we're covering that by funding them.
Well, and it leads into another topic that you and I care deeply about: our national security.
Yes.
If you do not have energy independence, you're dependent on foreign sources of energy. Mm-hmm. Foreign sources of energy, yes. And who gets rich? The foreigners who are supplying the energy.
Our enemies.
The guys who want to destroy us. So what are we doing? We're having unilateral disarmament in terms of our energy capacity. And look what happened with the whole Ukrainian and Russia thing. Energy is a big source. Russia's having blackmail against the European nations.
Yes.
And it wasn't big for us supplying them with the energy. It's a problem. You could do fracking, you can do it in a safe way. In fact, in last night's show on Katz and Cosby, we had Harold Hamm, mm-hmm. who's the head of Constellation, okay? Or Continental. I think it must be Continental, which is a big oil company out of Oklahoma and Texas. He's the guy who's really the father of fracking.
Really?
He's the one who created it.
Unreal.
The horizontal fracking and getting the money. It's all here. It can all be done. We can be independent. We have enough oil for the next 100 years, as Senator Sullivan of Alaska has pointed out, between Alaskan oil, what we have here in the United States, and if we need more, we can get it from our friends in Canada. There's plenty of energy to go around. And if you don't have energy, then you freeze in the winter and you boil in the summer. Your cars won't run because the electric cars just are not able to do everything they promised them. They put these mandates on.
And as you pointed out, if you're going to have energy and everyone's going to have an electric car, what creates energy? Fossil fuels.
Of course. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of it. So they have no idea. And by the way, if you're worried about the environment, to do what they need for the natural resources, for the electricity, you have to disrupt natural resources and do very detrimental to the environment drilling.
And where are these natural resources predominantly? China. Right. Again, if you find our enemies, they have what we need, and we are funding them, whether it be, the materials we need for these electric cars or uranium.
Uranium. I'm glad you brought that up. Uranium. Guess what our esteemed president wants to do? He wants to shut down the ability to get uranium out of the United States lands. Now, why? Why does he want to do this? I don't know what motivates this man to do a lot of things he does, but I'll tell you what you do need. The foreign European countries have already realized that nuclear is green energy. So if you want to have green energy, you go nuclear. And you can have these little SMRs, they call them, generators, and you can do that. and they're perfectly fine, and they're perfectly safe, and they power the nuclear submarines. So you can have these SMRs, but you need to have, for nuclear energy, you need to have uranium. So let's get this straight. You want to shut down natural gas, you want to shut down fossil fuels, and now you want to shut down uranium. Okay? What are we going to do?
And who produces half the uranium in the world? Russia. It's unbelievable. We spend $1 billion to import Russian-based uranium. I don't understand, and I believe that, as you said, that the Biden administration as a tool is using the national, declaring a part of, I guess it was the Grand Canyon you pointed out, another national monument status, which would basically ban the mining for uranium and the collection of uranium on 1.1 million acres. That's unreal. It's unbelievable. It's, again, we are excising our dependency onto our enemies and those who want to do us harm. It's unbelievable. I mean, Russia is now helping in the coup in Niger. That's the 7th largest producer of uranium in the world.
Must be a coincidence, And let's talk about Niger. Very important point. It's good. I'm glad you brought that up. The United States had a policy of supporting the regime there, which was pro-West,
yes,
pro-American. You have a military coup. Who's behind the military coup?
Russia.
The Wagner Group.
Yep.
The Wagner Group. They're all over Africa. So while we're playing these ridiculous games, Russians' influence is moving into the Mideast and into Africa. When are we going to wake up to understand that this is not friendly competition, but this is a war? This is a very hot, cold war that's going on, and we're being outplayed, outmaneuvered. We haven't even learned how to set up a chessboard at all. We're not even playing checkers well, and these guys are master chess players. And they're beating us. They're beating us.
It's unreal. And think about that. Uranium is needed for, as you pointed out, for reusable, renewable energy. So that's important. You would think that would be important to the green acolytes and such as that. But it's also important to national security, as you pointed out, for our nuclear carriers, our nuclear submarines and such. But it's also important in the fighting of cancer. It's unbelievable that we are now, basically, trying to reduce our own dependency, our own independence, and making ourselves dependent upon others. It's unreal. It's also, if you look at this, it's the United States, especially if you look at Niger and whatnot, and the coup they have there, it's, again, the United States losing ground on the world stage. We've done it in the Middle East. We've done it in the Ukraine. We've done it in Europe. And now we're doing it in Africa.
Yeah. Well, Kevin is giving us that sign. I see this big hook. He's swinging that hook right at us, Jesse. So you and I are going to have to sign off. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We certainly hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed being with you today. And we look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. Thank you very much for listening.
Great to be here.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced, specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.